Man, we got a lot to get to after week one on this college football show on NewOrleans.Football. Bad week one for LSU. Really bad week one for LSU, getting beat by Florida State 45-24. Was this LSU team not as good as we expected?
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah, I mean, look, they were a top 5 team, and they came out and did not play like a top 5 team. Like, they got smoked. I mean, it was
Yeah,
it was probably a
by a
humbling
really
game.
good Florida State
Yeah,
team.
but I mean, if you are a team with national championship aspirations, you got to be more competitive than they were in that game.
Yeah.
They were in the first half, second half, the wheels just came completely off. Going into halftime, it felt like, okay, if they tighten some things up, they can be in good shape in this game. But they just left all the plays in the field from the first half and then like quadrupled that in the second half. And it was a mess for them. So, yeah, not a good game for LSU at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that needs to get cleaned up. Of course, they've got Grambling State this week. We're going to talk about that with T-Bob Abear, who's going to be joining us from Baton Rouge. But for LSU, it's a lot of things. They didn't have a balanced attack, could not establish the run game, couldn't get any push in the run game. That's a big concern with the offensive line. What's going on with their secondary? Is it something that can change? And are they going to move Harold Perkins back to the see-ball, get-ball, or is he going to stay as a true middle linebacker? We'll see. But these are some of the things that are a genuine concern for LSU. It is week one, but it was really just a bad week one that showed in a lot of ways. Even special teams is still a question mark. You definitely don't want to be in the season with these question marks. It's one thing to have it before the season starts. It's another to have it during the season. For Tulane, down the street, the 24th ranked Green Wave beat South Alabama handedly 37-17. You were at that game. Our guy Jaquan Jackson, who's going to be joining us a little bit later after T-Bob, had a great game, and this offense seems to be rolling.
Yeah, it was bombs away in this game, but I think this week's going to be a much better test. The safeties for South Alabama just kind of had some issues providing any type of safety back there. And it just kind of felt like the middle of the field was wide open the whole entire game. But credit to the Tulane staff. Like, they saw it, they exploited it. They just kept going at it over and over and over. The necessary adjustments never came. They found ways to exploit it even more. Jaquan scored was on a flea flicker on his second touchdown. So they just did a lot of stuff to get those safeties out of place, knowing that they were vulnerable, and kind of really went after him. So I thought it was a great game for them. Pratt's only miss was a drop pass. So he was, he was perfect in this game, executed everything that was there. So great start for them offensively, but we'll see what they do against the SEC opponent this week.
Yeah, Tulane has an opportunity to move the needle. They're still 24th after week one. They're welcoming in 20th ranked Ole Miss, which we saw Ole Miss beat them bad in Oxford just 2 seasons ago. Of course, we know like that was the weird rain out game. Jaquan Jackson kind of brings us in a little bit as to what they were dealing with in the locker room during that rain out. But Tulane has the national attention, but to solidify it and move up, let's say maybe top 15. I don't know if a win over Ole Miss gets them there, but it definitely puts them in a limelight where you can't ignore Tulane anymore if they beat Ole Miss. And look, I mean, they've got a good schedule. We'll see what happens. But we are starting this show off with LSU. We bring in T-Bob now. Welcome T-Bob Abear back to the college football show here on NewOrleans.Football. T-Bob, I believe all of the things that we talked about ahead of week one, all the things that we were concerned about, the secondary, what was the run game going to look like, how was the offensive line going to hold up, all the things that we were concerned about came to a head in this Florida State loss.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny, right? You look back at our interview last week and we said it pretty much on paper. It was a lot of good on good, with the glaring weakness being the LSU secondary against the weapons. But we ended the conversation with, but all things being equal, if we're trying to see what's going to tip the scales here, that in theory, Brian Kelly should be a massive advantage over Mike Norvell. And that's probably the most shocking part of breaking down this game. And I watched the film for about 3 hours on Monday night to, really solidify all my thoughts on exactly what happened. And look, there's certainly a lot of play issues that can get fixed and that you can get into like on the players basis. But I was shocked at how much I feel as if Norvell and his staff kind of really just outcoached Brian Kelly and his staff. Now, there's like execution things that you can point to, but some of the problems, in my opinion, arguably run maybe even a little deeper. And offensively, especially, because both teams are running the spread, right? Both teams have pretty good weapons on the outside. Both teams have dynamic quarterbacks. And yet watching the LSU spread to me felt like reading the encyclopedia, like an old hardback encyclopedia, whereas watching what Mike Norvell in Florida State was doing felt like surfing the internet. I mean, when you watch Norvell, what FSU was employed, I mean, there's so much swirling movement. I mean, guys pulling every single play, even though the play's not going there, right? Jet sweeps that are building into other fakes, and it just felt like a composition, right? These interconnecting themes that were building on top of one another. Whereas you look at LSU, and it just felt more like a collection of notes or a collection of plays. The run game especially was hyper vanilla. And it's crazy because the first couple of plays for LSU were actually really well designed and had a lot of those more exciting misdirection elements that I wanted them to kind of like build upon. But not only did they not build upon it, they just straight up went away from it. So, like, certainly we can have discussion on Jaden Daniels, receivers, crucial errors, all these sorts of things. What in the world? How did you emerge from camp thinking that was the way to use Harold Perkins? Like, there's a lot to criticize, but I just give a huge hat tip to Norvell and his staff, because I wasn't the only one kind of falling back on, well, BK should be the difference in this game. And if anything, it was the opposite, because they got out coached in the same way that the secondary just got out talented.
So that's kind of a terrifying answer, because we just watched another team in Louisiana last year that kind of had like a trapper keeper type offense where it just felt like they were so far behind the times, and you kept waiting for them to figure it out and to add these elements and to do the things that the other team on the other side of the field was doing every single week, and they just couldn't. So is this stuff, do you feel like LSU can figure it out and be modern and consistent and have the identity and do all those things? Or do you feel this is something that's maybe a little bit alarming and possibly deep-seated?
No, so, well, I think it's interesting because unlike the NFL, where it's an even playing field, so something like that takes on a week-to-week importance, the LSU offense, like, the entire LSU team, like, this film was not about LSU being bad as much as it was about Florida State being really good, right?
Okay.
Like, there's still a lot of good there for LSU, and this offense is not so broken that it's not going to work. Like, it's going to work against the vast majorities of teams that you play, right? I mean, even in this game, you had a really strong first half. You're up 17-14 despite having 2 red zone trips, in which you come away with nothing because of fourth downs. It's a bad play calls and bad execution by the players. And so, no, it's not an abject disaster. It's just that it's maybe a limiting factor, right? Because, like, that's the biggest takeaway from this was here you had 2 teams that entered the year with championship aspirations. And while I still think LSU is probably like a 9-3, 10-win team of the bowl game, like, I don't think it's a disaster by any means. It's just that they don't feel tier 1. Florida State proved, okay, no, we are playoff relevant. We should be the favorites to win the ACC. You were hoping you were going to merge with those feelings out of LSU, and that's not the case. But, like, this offense will do. Like, it only felt so bad because I think, and Norvell is a great play caller, an offensive designer, right? I mean, that's kind of what he made his hay on. So it's one of those deals where you're not going to feel it as intensely when you play Mississippi State or when you play the vast majority of your schedule. So, no, I don't think it's a disaster by any means. I just think I think some of it was a bit disappointing to see, because when you play the best teams, you have to have the ability to maximize your players and your weapons. And I don't feel that they did that.
So tier 1's cooked. That's out the window, gone.
I think so. But we're drawing from one game of evidence, and that's how these games go. I mean, that's how these things go, right? Like, I'll always allow room for improvement and to be proven wrong. So, like, granted, against Grambling, you're not going to be able to do anything that'll really convince you. But look, this team was awful last year coming out of game 1. At least they weren't awful here. Like, there was still a lot of good there. Like, the offensive line, that's a very good Florida State defensive line. And other the offensive line pass blocked really well. So the run blocking wasn't the best. But then again, I feel like you could have done more, power and counter and less just basic zone run constantly. The defensive line, the interior defensive line, I thought was really strong. They're going to get Mason Smith back, right? So, like, no, maybe they get to tier 1, but no, right now with what I just witnessed, I think there's probably too many limiting factors to put them up there with the Michigans of the world.
before we get to Harold Perkins, because I feel like that's the one everybody's like, what on earth happened with that? There were a couple things that were concerning to me. The first is in Brian Kelly's press conference, he was saying that when they rolled out at halftime, he felt like something was off, felt like something was wrong, and didn't honestly do anything about it. In my opinion, as the head coach of this team, why are you not pulling the guys back together that if you feel like something is off as they're coming out of the tunnel, coming out of halftime, like why that wasn't improved, it was an issue for me. Some of just the things that he talked about in his press conference, that it was almost kind of, it was finger pointing at themselves as far as like the coaching staff, but it was a lot of finger pointing on the players as well. And I think that's concerning for a fan base that's maybe used to a coach that is able to handle press conferences after a game, where it usually is, hey, we're just going to get back together, fix these things, this, that, and the other. To me, it was more of a lot of blame placing after a week 1 loss that, as you mentioned, yes, it was ugly for LSU, but we're not walking away from week 1 like we were last year. And also to just get into the Jaden Daniels conversation. A lot of people are ready to move off from him, but to me, it seemed like Jaden Daniels was not the ultimate problem in this game. The play calling was questionable. You couldn't get a balanced attack. Like, Jaden Daniels should not be your leading rusher heading into this year. And that was the plan, at least, that they talked about in fall camp. But ultimately, Jaden Daniels did lead the team in rushing. You couldn't establish a run game. But Jaden Daniels, we saw on that first drive, as you mentioned, I mean, he can put some things together. And if you continue to put that together through the flow of a game, this could be a really good offense.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, in Jaden's defense, what happens if you don't have the massive drops there in the third quarter, right? When you're trying to keep pace. I mean, one happens on third down, and if you go back and watch it, it's a ball that if caught, you have one man to beat, and then you score. The ball at the end of the third quarter, what happens the next play? Malik Neighbors slips, it ends up being a pick, right? Now here's the thing. Imagine this. The Jaden Daniels conversation is nuanced. And nuance is something that doesn't always play well in this business. Because certainly, like, I've been a big Daniels defender, but certainly you watch that film and you see some of the areas in which he's limited. But then I'm kind of like, okay, then why are we trying to do this, right? Like, and if you look at the first red zone possession, the fade is a great example. It was an objectively awful fade pass. One of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, it hit the defender in the lower back. Okay, then why is that even in the repertoire?
Right.
You know, like that should have been cut out. And so here you have a player that clearly has a limiting factor, but it's one that you would hope that a coach would mitigate. But the blame lies on both. And so if you get into Kelly's post game, you know, it's I've seen a lot out of coaches where they say this was a failure on the coaches, but the players also failed. But I don't know. I kind of emerge out of this game, and I mean, I feel that. Because no doubt I do think like the coaches failed. Like, the return game remains as awful as ever. How that is possible after an entire year of talking about it boggles the mind. At the same time, you got to catch the punt, right? Like, the amount of zone defense that you ran, which you have to because you couldn't go man to man. So like, I get it. I wish you had done less of it, but like, why did the players look so just lost in zone? The linebackers had Harold Perkins was the lowest graded defender on the entire team. I think maybe lowest graded player, according to PFF, on the entire team. I would say that's a failure of coaching, right? But then when I'm watching like quarter halves coverage and the guy's just not on the hash, and so it's a wide open third down conversion, like, that's a failure on that player executing. So I think when you get your ass kicked in the way that you did that second half, that you can objectively say that this was a failure of both coaches and players. And look, but you know what? This is, you can't sit here and feel bad for yourself. Like, the worst thing you can do now is let this affect the locker room and cause divides amongst the players or between the coaches and the players. Like, at this point, you just got to suck it up, and it's all going to be about how you respond. Because you obviously started to read your own press clippings. I would say for the staff, probably the biggest issue that I have is, and Kelly kind of alluded to this, there just appeared to be a very clear disconnect between who they thought this team was and the team that we actually saw. And Harold Perkins kind of embodies that in, there's no way they went through all of camp watching him drop into zone coverage watching him play that more traditional middle linebacker role, I just can't fathom what world they were in where they watched him for an entire camp and thought, yes, this is the best way to use him. And maybe that's because LSU's offense wasn't stressing them in the same way that Florida State's was. Like, I'm willing to accept that, but it was so shockingly poor and ineffective. And then, to be fair, every time Perkins did rush, which was not a lot, 28 pass coverage snaps, so only 7 rushes, Florida State's got a damn good offensive line, and they just shut his ass down, so maybe that's where it's been a player as well. So, like, there's a lot of bad to go around when you allow 31 unanswered on a national stage in the way that LSU did. But there's also some good on that tape, right? And again, I still maintain it's more about Florida State being very good and one of the most complete teams in the country versus LSU being very bad. I think LSU's kind of in that 10 to 15 range now instead of that 1 to 5 range.
Are they like committed to keeping Perkins in that type of role? And I mean, look, being stressed, like you can go out to practice and kind of watch how a guy's dropping at linebacker like day one and kind of know what he is as an athlete. Like that's something that's very isolated and very, very easy to see. So if you were looking at that and you can't notice it, you kind of got to ask, what are you doing?
Yeah. And T-Bob, is it because they don't is it because they don't have somebody to put there? I mean, what is it?
No, I mean, Greg Penn started last year. There is some odd, and Penn wasn't the best, but he did come on more at the end of the year. He had a couple nice games late. There is some odd insistence to make him a middle linebacker. And is it coming from Perk's camp? I can't imagine why. I mean, his size, fits maybe more of an off-ball linebacker. And people are like, well, no, but he's more Micah Parsons. And I feel that, but Micah Parsons is a couple inches taller. So maybe size, but then I'm looking at it like, if I'm Perkins' camp, go look at what Nick Bosa just got paid.
Yep.
Who gets paid? Quarterbacks get paid, and people who affect the quarterback or protect the quarterback get paid. Quarterbacks, edge rushers, corners, left tackles. Those guys get paid. So why would I want to become a middle linebacker? I just don't. I don't really understand it. So I don't know. And then again, if I'm like Matt House and this LSU defensive staff, why do I want him there in the middle? I never, I'm not trying to be like, I was right guy, because I'm wrong all the time. Everybody's wrong all the time. Like, that's what this business is. It's entertainment. You're right, you're wrong, whatever. I never agreed with moving him in the middle of the first place, though, even though I kind of came around to the idea that people were saying, well, it makes him less schemable. Well, I would say that Sunday he looked more schemable than I've ever seen him look in his entire life, because literally everything Florida State did revolved around manipulating him and taking advantage of him. And so it is shocking when you get out of game one and on the Monday press conference, Brian Kelly's talking about, well, maybe there's a happy medium that can be struck. And I'm with you, Nick. I'm like, well, why did it take this to arrive there? Like, Matt House, you were a linebackers coach in the NFL on Super Bowl winning teams. There's no way that you saw that linebacker play during camp and thought, this is our best option. This is how we need to use this man.
You were singing Matt House's praises last week, just about how, and let's get into the transfer portal conversation with this. Look, it seemed like Florida State and Colorado State figured it out, how to get guys in and get them off the ball right away. LSU just didn't do that with the secondary. And that was the biggest thing people were circling is, all right, is it just that Florida State's wide receivers were that good? And I think that is absolutely a part of the conversation. I mean, Keon Coleman is that dude. Like, he was that good. Yeah. But the fact that you had no answer in the secondary is concerning. And look, you do get Grambling State this week. You guys can work on some things and things like that. But I mean, you're right back in the gauntlet at Mississippi State after this. How do you get the defensive backs kind of rallied together and figure out what's going on?
Yeah, so again, that's another one where, like you said, I mean, I think Florida State is a top 5 receiver in the entire country, weapons-wise, right? I mean, their running back, like we mentioned last week, the running back's a top NFL prospect running back. Jaheim Bell from South Carolina, tight end, is dynamic, can be used all over the place. Johnny Wilson, 6'7", and awesome. Keon Coleman was Michigan State's best receiver last year. Look at what he did here. Winston Wright Jr. was West Virginia's best receiver. He's their slot. So, like, and LSU tried in the portal. They got Deuce Chestnut, who's an all-ACC performer and who was in the right position a couple of times. But when the guy's just bigger and better than you get mossed, right? Yeah. It's like Major Burns had good coverage on the Keon Coleman touchdown in the corner of the end zone, when actually the one really good pass which Harold Perkins had and Travis just got out his hand. It was perfect coverage. The guy was just better. But LSU took J.K. Johnson from Ohio State out of the portal. They took Denver Harris out of the portal from A&M. and those guys just didn't hit. Like they took Omar Speights, the middle linebacker. He did great. Right. So it's one of those deals where they tried and they threw a lot of resources into trying to make the secondary work. And by a mixture of injury, misses, and then just sheer physical limitations, like Deuce Chestnut is maximizing what he has, and he's going to have a ton of success this year. I mean, hell, he had that really good pick in this game to make up for the fumbled snap. But if he runs up against a guy who's 6'7", that's always just going to be an inherent disadvantage for him. So it's, but again, you're not going to face that receiver group week in and week out. So you should be able to look drastically better in the majority of the rest of the season.
So sounds like you're okay. Not a crisis. Like Twitter's a crisis. Everywhere's a crisis. it's the sky's not completely falling. It's just it's raining a little bit.
It's not whiskey and wine talk.
Yeah, look, everything is y'all know this doing this business. Everything is a function of expectations.
Yeah.
Like it does not matter what the objective results are, right? When the expectation is to win a championship, obviously a loss is going to feel drastically differently than when the expectation is to try to be bowl eligible. And so, yes, this was a season in which LSU had, and I think it was easy on paper to see why, had convinced themselves they were championship caliber, playoff caliber, SEC West champion caliber. And so when you lose that badly, that expectation's kind of blown out the water. And anytime you fall short of expectation, that's what really brews the anger, right? And so I understand absolutely why everybody is so sky is falling. I just think the kind of objective take expectation out of it, I think the objective view is that, yeah, they're still going to be better than almost every team on the schedule, right? I mean, Alabama will be better. I'm still unsure what to make about Ole Miss. A&M by years in, they had a stronger week one than LSU did. Maybe they're better, but like everybody else, you're going to take LSU still right now. So no, I'm not. Again, Florida State's good, at least in my opinion. Like I would be shocked if they go out and they end up being bad. Jordan Travis for the last 6 games last year had the highest QBR in the entire country. He looked like he built upon that this year. Like that felt like a bunch of old gray beard, salty ass vets. And they are. I mean, they top 5 returning production in the entire country. And one element, and this is a miss by me, one element in all of this that I missed in the run up to this game. And BK, it's funny because he talked about it in the quote that he's now being lambasted about, where he's like, we're going to beat the heck out of Florida State. He does mention right before that 40% of this travel roster is either here for the first time or traveling for the first time. So although the front line starters looked very strong for LSU in a lot of places, there was a bit more new and a bit more inexperience than maybe we had given credence to. And I think that was an element in the shit gumbo that you witnessed in the second half of last week's game.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I at least like that Brian Kelly was fiery to end his weekly press conference. I think he's going to probably light a fire up all of their asses this week. And I know it's only Grambling State, but we'll see how LSU responds. Real quickly on the college football landscape, what an awesome week one, though. Colorado State, the Duke upset over Clemson. I mean, what are you looking forward to in week 2 and just this year in college football? It seems like this is one of those years where it is just wide open. I mean, we have prime time now in college football, which is awesome.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, it's funny because it was a very fun week one, but it was a fun week one because of Coach Prime. Like, CFB should be thanking Prime because
100%.
like this is why there's been a hostile takeover of college football by TV executives, is because the week 1 and 2 slate just aren't getting it done. Now, if you're a college football nerd like me, ton of fun, right? Because I give a fuck about like Notre Dame, NC State this week. Like that's actually very exciting to me because I think Notre Dame looks like a borderline playoff team. I think Sam Hartman looks awesome there at quarterback, and like maybe he solves their biggest problem. And NC State's a nice step up for them. But like if you talk about getting the average viewer, I mean the ranked matches this weekend are Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss, Tulane, which again I love, and I loved week 1. Like Nebraska blew my, Colorado blew my mind with what they did against TCU, how solid Shedeur Sanders looked, how sustainable the success that you saw looked. I mean, if you follow college football nationally, Brian Kelly and Dabo Swinney are two of the biggest villains in the entire fabric. Like, everybody hates them. So yes, most college football fans got deep enjoyment out of watching both of them get picked apart on back-to-back nights in national TV when they were the only show in town. So it was a lot of fun. I still think it could be better in the future. That said, really fascinating for this week 2 slate in a lot of ways if you do care. Like Nebraska versus Colorado this Saturday. Colorado has, because of Deion's brashness, right? And because how the internet works, when you overly love on something, there's always a rubber band loading up to shoot the other way. They are firmly planted in the culture war. Yeah. And there are so many people waiting for them to fail. And so all of a sudden, here Colorado is with the pressure of the world on their shoulders to beat Nebraska, even though 2 months ago in the summer, Nebraska was a double-digit favorite to win this game. Now Colorado's the favorite. That's fascinating to me. Texas versus Alabama. People are telling me Steve Sarkisian, a guy that's never won 10 games in his career at schools where every coach that has followed him up has won 10 games. You're going to tell me that guy's going to go into Alabama, go into Tuscaloosa and beat Nick Saban? I don't see it. You got A&M versus Miami, a battle of the bad. Just a couple of shit overrated teams trying to prove they're no longer shit overrated. So, like, there's some excitement there, man. And then Ole Miss Tulane, because, look, we're all Green Wave fans here. Would love nothing more than if Ole Miss could fight, than if Tulane. I don't give a shit about SEC. I got no SEC pride. Get the hell out of here with that. I want all other SEC teams to burn. Nothing would make me happier, though, than Tulane beating Ole Miss this weekend. So there's some nice stuff to look forward to, but I still just need these cupcake games to be gone. I need to demand more. Like, it's probably good for LSU that they get a week to focus on themselves, but I would much prefer playing like a Penn State this weekend and just nut up and find a way to get better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, T-Bob, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, you guys can listen to him in Baton Rouge on ESPN Radio, and T-Bob will so excited to talk about Grambling next week. Why not?
Yeah. Look, that is one thing, though. The news cycle always provides, okay?
Oh, yeah.
You just got to figure out a way to make it entertaining, which y'all get. So, hey, and check out Snaps with me and Aaron Murray, youtube.com/@volumesnaps. Come hang out. Very fun. Y'all have a great day. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks, T-Bob. Joined now by Jaquan Jackson, Tulane wide receiver, who went off in the first game of the season against South Alabama, beating them 37-17, but we got a top 25 matchup on the way. Tulane 24th ranked in the nation, Ole Miss 20th ranked. How you feeling after week 1?
I feel great, man. We went out there and executed and got the W.
Yeah, 3 receptions, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. We got his 2 touchdowns pulled up on the screen now. Let's take a look, Brandon. Nick was at this game.
Yeah.
What'd you see on this play?
I just saw Mr. Big Play here just smoking him up the middle, left the middle of the field wide open. He's seen it. Easy score.
Easy money.
Jaquan right there. The laser route. Safety bites. And you see that. What do you run? 4.4? What's your speed, man?
I said 4.3, but
you a 4.3?
On that one, I ain't run a 4.3, you know.
What'd you run on that one?
Probably say, I think that game I hit a 21. In that game I hit a 21.
Oh, wow.
So, like, what was kind of the key for you guys just attacking down the field? Like, what were they doing that you guys were able to just, like, exploit just kind of, over and over throughout the game?
You just know with us just coming into the game plan, just like I said on the last episode, we knew what they was going to, like, run on defense and some of the things they ran that we didn't see. So we just had to execute and at the second half just capitalize off what we saw in the first half. And Coach did a great job of coming up with great schemes and putting us in position to win.
So was that a game where they kind of game planned it and it worked from square one and you guys just stuck with it the whole way?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's crazy because whatever they put on film, that's what they had the night we played them.
How good did it feel just to get back out there with the guys? I mean, you guys have been having to hear all offseason about expectations after being conference champs, winning the Cotton Bowl. How good was it to just get back out there after you talking to us this offseason, you and Michael Pratt working together this offseason, to get out there and see, like, this is clicking and this is going to work this year?
It was great. Just like I said, we didn't put the pads on since the Cotton Bowl, and and it was amazing just to hearing the pass click and just the excitement from the fans
Yeah.
and the people who was cheering for us, and the guy just having excitement after every touchdown that we scored, and the turnovers. Our defense had a lot of turnovers, and we scored a lot of touchdowns. So it's amazing. Glad to be back playing the sport that we all love.
Yeah, I know you're a leader in that wide receiver room. You've got a lot of young guys. Chris Brazel,
Chris Brazel.
and Dante Fleming, Alex Bauman. Of course, we saw what he could do last year in the Cotton Bowl coming in as a freshman. I believe that was the tight end who caught the
Yes.
game-winning touchdown. What did you see from that group?
Really, it was amazing seeing everything that we practiced that week, and just the whole summer we worked our tails off just to be great. And as you can see, Pratt went from 14 for 15, and just every time I think about it, the touchdown I dropped, he would have went 15 for 15. That's an amazing game for him.
Yeah.
How do you guys, that receiver core, how do you guys kind of complement one another, and how do you guys play off of one another?
Really, it's just the main thing is about being positivity. The game that we play is one football. Everybody can't get it. But when your time comes, you gotta hit that home run.
With that, when you guys are talking about like route concepts, when you're in like a wide receiver meeting with some of these guys, obviously you're good friends with Lawrence Keys. He's been around the game for a while at different spots. Is it one of those situations where you all are kind of picking your brains, or maybe even some of these freshman wide receivers are coming to you like, hey, what'd you see on this and that?
Always. It's just we watch film together all the time, in the morning, at night, come back up to the office, and it's always different things people can do. Just like I said, Keys can show me some things that he can do. I can show Keys what I can do. We all different type of players, Keys shifty and quick. I'm shifty and quick, and we got other players that can do different things. So we just going to this what we got, this what play we have, and just seeing how can we we gotta have, every time we think about it, our coach always tells us just have a plan. That's the biggest thing. How you do one thing is how you do another thing.
Jaquan, obviously you don't want to see Michael Pratt ever taking a hit, but when your quarterback does take a hit like he did at the end of the first half, and he just kind of like bounces up, keeps going, keeps executing, like what is that toughness, just kind of like seeing it do for a team? Like when your quarterback can kind of be like that guy that's in there, like just, taking the hits and still delivering.
When you see things like that, him getting hit, it's football, and you can stop it, and sometimes you can't stop it, but it is what it is. But just as Michael Pratt, he's going to be him no matter what. He's tough, and as you can see over the years, he's been at Tulane. He had tough plays. He even tried to block sometimes, which try to tell him stop blocking.
Yeah.
We got to keep you safe and protected.
Is that toughness that he has like something you guys all feed off of? Like you see him trying to throw a block or something, like it's just like, well, damn, the quarterback's doing it, so like we gotta, kind of rally around his toughness.
For sure. Every time you see it, just we mess with him, man, about it. Like, man, you can't do this, man, you can't do that. He the guy that try to prove you wrong no matter what it is. He always trying to win, and you'll love that from a guy who leads your team, and it makes you want to go harder each and every day, no matter what it is.
How much are you guys looking forward to getting this Ole Miss game back? I mean, you guys were in it against them in 2021, I believe, before the rain delay. Now, after the rain delay, it was a little bit of a different story, but take us through that game and what was happening with the rain delay and just how challenging it was to get locked back in.
Just going back to that game, as you said, we had a rain delay, and we was in there ready to play at the time the kickoff was supposed to be, but we had a setback, and playing this game, you have a lot of adversity, and we were just in the locker room chilling, having our shoes off, no socks on, and just we ran out of snacks that night, so we had to go get extra snacks to fuel our stomach, because we ate early that day.
Yeah.
And by the time the game started, it was late, and then we finished the game at about 1 or 2 o'clock.
I was about to say, what time did you guys get back?
Like 1 or 2 o'clock. Probably home like 3 or 4, I think. It was a long night, but just going to that game, we didn't come out with a win, but it is what it is. You win, lose. You win and lose sometimes, but it is what it is.
I know you were telling us too, you guys were kind of in a different place back in 2021. Kurt Hester, the new strength coach, wasn't here yet. Tell us a little bit about just how everybody's bodies kind of have changed, and you guys are, it seems like, primed to go up against an SEC opponent and not get beat around as much as you did 2 years ago.
Well, everything Coach Hester does is a meaning behind everything that we do, and everything he does, he's explaining it, and he does it himself before he make us do it. So that's one of the things that a lot of the players like, that he goes out there and put his cleats on and make the strength coaches do the workout to see like what is working on and how would they feel if we could do it, they can do it, you know. And then it brings a lot of like excitement out of us because we look at like if the strength coach could do it, we can do it, you know. And like I know a lot of people around the world don't do that as a strength staff, but we just different at Tulane, and whatever he tells us to do, we do, and we trust in him.
Which is kind of the vibe around the team going into this game with the opportunity against, you know, a top 20 ranked opponent. Is it just something you guys are excited to be able to prove yourself against, you know, a team of that caliber?
Anytime we have a game, we're excited for the opportunity every time, you know. We treat every game as a big game. We don't look down on nobody, and we don't look too high on nobody, you know. Each game, no matter who it is, we treat it as a big game.
We obviously know like the implications of this game, though, especially I think back to Kansas State on the road last year. And look, it was an opportunity to put you guys on the map. I know you guys treat every game like 1-0, but what can this do for the program nationally, taking down somebody like Ole Miss?
Really, it would be amazing when we get the win Saturday, but we try not to get in all of that, you know, because just looking ahead can mess us up. And just like last year, we was going into playing Southern Miss and being 4-0 for the first time, and the result came down, we lost. So we just looked ahead. We just try to stay in the moment, you know, and just be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Ole Miss, like, just what are some of the things that stand out about their defense when you guys like do your film study?
First off, we know they have a lot of transfers on their defense, so it's when looking at the film, try to just get a good feel of what they can and cannot do, you know. And it's kind of hard because just watching from last week, there's some plays that you can get a feel for, but I think the score was a high-scoring game, and the team that they played didn't score that many touchdowns. But when we know that Pete Golden is the DC from Alabama, so you know he's going to come with a great defense with great players, and they're disciplined, you know. So just got to be ready.
When you are looking at a team with transfers, like, do you look back to like last year to just like individually kind of see what maybe somebody does, or is it just kind of you do the best you can with what's out there from this year?
It's kind of both. Just do the best we can from last week and just trying to see what we can do. You know, it's hard. It's very hard just because like just going from last year, Ole Miss defense is not the same guy. It has some guys in the same spots, but not all of them in the same spots, and some new guys. So then it comes with chemistry too. You know, like we had a lot of guys that on our team last year been there for a long time, and that's why we had the success that we had. You know.
You talk about just how lethal their offense is. I mean, you can't get past what you've seen in week 1 with Trey Harris, the 4 touchdown catches, and their quarterback in Jackson Dart. To me, it's going to be a really fun quarterback battle seeing Michael Pratt, who is going to play, even though he was a little bit banged up after taking that hit. Willie Fritz did say this week that he should be good to go, and it didn't seem like he was walking around with a limp at all in practice. I mean, he got lit up pretty good on that play, but he's going to be good to go. It's going to be a fun matchup on that side of the ball. But when you look at their defense, you talk about just the difficulty in watching some of the things that you can pick apart. But do you feel like this wide receiver core at Tulane can handle what their secondary looks like this year?
Oh, for sure. Not even just the wide receiver, just the whole offense. You know, if we just go in there and do our 1-11, it's going to be a great game on our side and the defensive side for Tulane.
Do you maybe have something to prove to in this game? I know you mentioned back in 2021 getting beat up a little bit against Ole Miss.
I had a concussion like when we played them in 2021. Got knocked out in the third quarter, but I pray for this game that I stay in for all 4 quarters and be healthy, and the whole team, and the Ole Miss team too. You know, you always try to go in the game and try to come out with no injuries, but you can't really stop that.
For Pratt, obviously staying healthy is going to be crucial, but it seems like just from week 1, I know it was South Alabama. They're a lesser opponent than Ole Miss. I think it's okay to say that, but the offensive line held up good in pass protection. It seemed like for the majority of the game with Michael Pratt.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the things my guy DR, I call him DR, but Coach Dan Rushard, he really take pride in his old line. Him and Coach Cannon Ray. He works with guys each and every day, and like I love him to death. Like he always try to give us tips to be better. Not even just the O-line, but everybody on the team, to the quarterback, to the running backs, and to the receivers, what we can do better. And one thing I like about our coaching staff and our team is like they let the coaches, like, if a coach got like some information like to give to other players, they let them do it instead of just, oh, that's my guy, don't talk to him. And that's one thing about our program. Like, we all equal. Like, we all open book.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's Dan Rochar, the former Saints offensive line coach. Before we let you get out of here, just what's been the vibe like this week, and maybe what's the messages from the coaches as you guys head into Ole Miss?
The message from the coaches is just go out there and play football. It's a football game, you know what I'm saying? Just go have fun. Like, if you don't have fun, it's not going to be fun. And that's just football. The vibes, it's been exciting just to see the guys flying around and just being excited, you know. It's always great after getting a win, you know. Like, it's kind of, just say if you got a loss, it's hard because you moping around and, you know, you got to work harder than way last week because you got to prove yourself the next week.
And it's going to be next man up mentality with one of the linebackers down this week too.
Yep, for sure. As always, like Coach Fritz always say, man, when your opportunity comes, you gotta hit that fastball.
All right, why should people come to Ullman this Saturday, Jaquan?
Oh man, they should come to Ullman every week, no matter what game playing. It don't matter if it's at night or in the day, but because it's a program that's really turned around and changed in the culture there, and we love the fans. It was packed last week versus South Alabama, and I know this game going to be a sellout. And if y'all don't, please watch it on TV. Please watch it on TV. It's going to be a great game, and already know Tulane will get the win. Roll wave.
There we go. Well, if you're not able to go to Ullman, it is going to be on ESPN2 at 2:30. Nick and I will be out there. It's going to be hot. It's going to be real hot out there at
Need some
Ullman.
more big plays, man. Need some more of those 40-yard touchdowns.
Gotta bring them back.
Make sure y'all bring your water and fans. Fan it off. Just fan it off.
Well, Jaquan, thanks so much for being here, and good luck this weekend, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank y'all for having me.